Welcome to Soul Thrive, where we explore spirituality through healing trauma, shadow work, and applying the laws of the universe in order to master ourselves without the fear of the unknown. I'm so excited to have our next guest on the podcast. Her name is Candace. Candace, please introduce yourself. I am so excited to start this conversation with you on our podcast. So welcome.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. I'm Candace Van Dell. I've been a spiritual coach and healer for the last 11 years. What else can I say? Over those 11 years, it's been basically my passion and my biggest purpose come to life. I feel like living totally authentically is my goal. That's what I help clients do by healing inner child wounds, by healing generational trauma, which most traditional therapists don't get that deep. So people will come to me because they want that last piece of the puzzle. So I've built my YouTube channel, my podcast. I have 12 online courses. I have a membership. I do all the coaching, everything. So I'm just happy to be here and talk about what's real, ladies.
Yes, yes. We love it too. The more
Yes.
authentic, the better.
Yes.
So I think Ivana has some questions she wants to ask.
Yeah, I would
all right.
love to hear about your process of how you go about healing with your clients.
Oh, a lot of people have been asking me this lately, like, what's a session like? And so I like to say, if you don't already know my work, I like to explain it as it may seem weird to you, but this is what happens. So I'll get into a session without even meeting people before they just sign up before they even have an intro, which is always how it's been for me. And I heard that that's not normal, but I'm lucky in the way that people just sign up and I'll sit with them and I'll say, okay, give me a little bit of your history. And already I'm tuning in to their energy field. I'm tuning in to what I'm feeling by what they're saying. Because a lot of people have a story that isn't actually the truth yet, right? So I kind of pick apart what's true and what's not true just by my own sort of, clairsentience and instinct. And as people talk, I say, don't get weirded out, but I'll get hits. So I'll say, like this happened the other day where I said, wait, what happened when you were 7? And this lady's like, oh, I just got chills when I'm telling you this. This lady's like, what? How did you know that? I'm like, something happened at 7. It was like an abandonment of sorts. I don't know. And she starts telling me how her father passed away at 7, and it's always affected her life. And so what I start to tell people is I kind of just channel your inner child. The inner child comes to me. I had a woman that I had our first session. It was probably a month ago. And I said to her, I don't know why, but your 12 or 13-year-old keeps wanting to talk. And she goes, that's so weird because when I signed up with you, I felt like my 12-year-old was doing it. And I was like, yeah, she's the one that's contacting me. And it happened again. She had sexual abuse at 12. And I was like, I don't know how to tell you that I do this, but I will just feel a block and that's the age you're stuck in. And so I'll walk through that. Sometimes I do an inner where we close our eyes. This is after a few sessions because I'm like, I want you to really trust me and yourself before we do this, because I'm going into your inner child. And we'll contact the inner child and we'll start to talk to it. And I had this lady, I've been working with her for about 3 months now. And she said, yeah, I've never done inner child work. I don't even know what that feels like. I don't know what she is. And we sat together and she came forward and she just started crying. Her little 7, 8-year-old had braids. And I was like, is she wearing black and white? And she goes, she's wearing black and white. And so I kind of go into that vortex with you. And the inner child, when you give it a voice, it tells you the truth. The part of you that you denied because you're like, no, that couldn't be true, or that was too painful to handle. It becomes really fun. Yes, fun to sit in a room with someone who is safe, who can also see what you're seeing. And it's very self-validating to build their self-trust of like, oh, I can trust what my impression is. I can trust what I see and feel because this woman that I just met is seeing and feeling the same thing. So that's the deeper work. I also have clients where I just talk to them about their patterns and I say, ooh, that's a mother wound. And they're like, no, everything's fine with my mom. I'm like, not really. Let's really dissect it.
Right.
And there's so many people over time who have gone from everything's fine and that it's not that, it's just my partner. What I like to say is if you have a toxic relationship dynamic or a pattern that you don't like, it starts with mother like other, right? Your partner is going to be like your emotional imprint with the parent, even if the parent had the best intention, even if the parent was doing everything right. What we find is these messages that we just thought were normal and we internalize that voice and then we don't know what's my intuition, what's my trauma. So I just dissect all of that for people and it's been incredible work. Really amazing.
Yeah, I love that because I can relate to you in a lot of ways. That's kind of how I operate. I do more of the soul retrieval aspect as well when it comes to inner child work. So,
Love it.
I'm in everybody's stuff all the time when it comes to working with their inner child. So it's nice to meet a fellow person who can grasp this
Gets
concept
it.
because it's not as easy to explain or as tangible for people to have a knowing in. And it really is cool to finally like get someone else who has that point of view.
Yeah.
Do you find that so you're like more clairsentient, so you like sense it? Can it be like a visceral response to your body as well with
It
your
is. It is. And it started coming out more and more and more the last few years. As you do your own work, you
Mhm.
really, you sit in your gifts and there's nothing blocking it anymore. And I have my monthly membership for 6 years now. And what I do with them is, I have people raise their hands who wants to talk that day. We meet every single Friday and I'll be like, wait, something's going on in my throat.
Right,
What's going
right,
on? Like you're
right.
holding back truth. And they're like, whoa, I'm having this pressure. And so I'll tell them what they're feeling. And they're like, Jesus, like it's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
And they'll say, yeah, that's what I'm feeling. And then because I have that ability to feel and it's neutral because it's not my feeling,
Yes.
I think that's why I can do it. I'm able to say why you have that. And
Yeah.
they're like, whoa, shit, what do I do? And I'm like, this is what you do. So
Yeah.
it is crazy. I won't tell you this weird story that happened maybe 2 months ago. This new guy came in, never met him. And he just started talking and he was stuttering a lot. And I said, that's a coping mechanism. I said, you didn't stutter when you were a little kid, did you? And he's like, no. And I started like cluing into him. And I said, when you were 5, I said, ooh. And then I saw this thing on the left side of his body. And I said, there's a father wound going on. And he's like,
Mm,
I did this to get attention. And I was like, actually, there's a bigger mother wound. It's like on your feminine side. And he started to shake and he's like, I've been feeling this. My left side goes numb. And I
yeah.
said, yes, because you need to address the mother wound. And behind him was all these handprints on the wall. I said, your little kid is trying to get your attention, literally. And he's like,
Right.
Candace, this is crazy. Of course, he signed up right away. And he's like, every week, he's like, now he's not stuttering.
Right.
Sometimes he will stutter, depends on his comfort level. And when he feels like a mirroring, see,
Right.
it's really big in inner child work. You guys probably know this, but it's like when you weren't properly mirrored of who you truly are,
Yep.
Mhm.
there's a huge block to you finding out who you truly are
Oh,
because we
yeah.
treat our inner child the way we were
Oh,
treated as
yeah.
a child.
Do you?
So,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, yeah,
I
no, we
always say,
agree with that. Everything you're saying is like check, check, check.
yeah.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
100%.
And I'm
Yeah.
curious, why do you feel that so many people are so disconnected from their emotions and things going on? Because you mentioned a couple times people come to see you and you're like, I'm tapping into what you're feeling. You are clearly not feeling any of it, but I'm able to tap into. Is it because we are so disconnected from our inner child? And the more we do the inner child work, the more we can actually start to feel what's going on. Because Christina will sometimes, even last night, like she texted me and she goes, your stomach and your low back.
Yeah. She's
Yeah,
the me.
like she's not
I'm
even in the
like,
same room with me.
yeah, I'm
It's
like,
like,
you need to go through the layers of your shame. You're in
right.
this place right now. This is where it's linked to, and this is where it's coming from. And so for me, it can be like that visceral response of
Yeah.
like physical part
Yeah.
of the experience. But yeah, to go back to
Yeah. So I'm just curious, is that like what your thought is? Why are people so disconnected today?
I love this question because it's so layered. And, I started my new podcast called Misunderstood, Guiding Highly Sensitive People Through an Emotional Dark Age, because literally we were all born into an emotional dark age. And those of us who have these abilities, let's say, I think everyone has it to a level, but those of us who are meant to do this work in the world get repressed a lot because emotions in this society, let's say this world, are misunderstood and there is no emotional intelligence. Now we're waking up and it's happening because of the generational shift and the paradigm shift. But what I see is we're born, this is what's very healthy with mother-father wound work and shadow work, is we're born into a society that says, this is the way it is, not how do you feel? And so a lot of people grow up with, I'm tuning into this client I had yesterday. People grow up with this idealized version of self, not this real self. So their idealized version doesn't have those feelings. Their idealized version has to stay intact by not letting the wounds ruin my life. And what I say is,
Mhm.
you're ruining your life by not letting the wound come up.
Oh,
And so
yeah.
people are disconnected from the truth of their feelings. People don't know how to feel because when you're a kid and you don't have someone soothing you or teaching you how to self-soothe, you say, this is overwhelming. I'm not going to feel it. It's in the back. It's in the shadow. So
Mhm.
to get a person to the place of feeling safe and held and not judged in what they feel is how we start to open up that inner child experience, because the inner child, every time I've ever done an inner with people, the inner child wants to talk to you. It's
Yes.
excited about your acknowledgement of them. And that's part of the work. I start teaching people how to do that every day. And then we have to listen to what they say, because your authentic self is kept away with the inner child saying, oh, I can't do that. She'll be mad at me. Like literally, we abandon her or him all the time without knowing it. And so what I always say is, did she tell you to go get an ice cream cone today? And my client will be like, I don't eat ice cream. I'm like, now you do. You have to listen to that
Yeah.
voice,
Yeah.
right? And the more we live in alignment with what we truly feel without making it wrong, judging it, questioning, is this what I feel? People will say to me all the time, I don't know how to know what I feel, but this is what I feel. I'm like, you just told me what you feel. You're not allowing yourself to feel what you feel.
Right,
Mhm.
So
right.
Mhm.
oftentimes we know, but that means I'm bad, or that means I'm crazy, or that means I'm disconnected from the tribe who's toxic. There's all these reasons we don't want to feel, but we all can feel. And so the reason we're all disconnected is we were born in a society that disconnects you from your inner guidance to
Yep.
line up with the one that keeps you safe, that oftentimes is disconnected from theirs.
Mhm.
Were you navigating this through your younger years too, like with your intuition? How was that process for you when you were a kid? Because my process was like, I thought it was normal until I realized, oh no, none of this is normal. It was the polar opposite. It was like,
Yeah, yeah,
I'm seeing spirit and I'm navigating this and I'm
yeah,
telling this. I was like 6, telling people things, and
same,
it's like
same.
totally normal. And then you hit a point in your adolescent years. There was like a form of people who accepted me for what I was and what I used to say and how I'd operate. And then as I got older, I was like, no, like this isn't normal. People are not operating this way. So what was your process with that?
Yeah, mine was a little different. When I was a kid, I would have like really bad nightmares and I would see a lot of things, if you know what I mean. I would see
Yeah.
spirit. I would see it in the doorway. I knew when my grandfather was passing away, I got a hit and then we got a call. Like I had what I have now, probably at the same level. And that got, it's kind of sad, but I understand it all now. That got really judged. I
Right.
was always called weird. You're strange. Why are you happy all the time? That doesn't make sense. And because I was always connected to something. And I kind of loved that about myself because I realized, I grew up in a home where I was the scapegoat. So everything that's wrong is because of you, because you're different.
Mhm.
And I was always like, I don't really understand it. And all of that is healed in the last few years. But what's interesting, just with my family dynamic, what's interesting is that kind of gave me a permission slip to go find me outside of the system and
Yeah.
really be my truth, because I knew that these abilities and things I was having of just knowing things that nobody else was knowing and seeing things that made me feel peaceful, I wasn't willing to let that go. And I think, I was on Ritalin for 10 years of my childhood, 7 to
Okay.
17. That was their way of sort of training
Yeah.
my emotions. Yeah, because they couldn't
Right.
understand them. And I
Mhm.
knew it was going on, but I also knew that this was not going to go on much longer. And I remember feeling during those years very anxious, very detached, because that's what the system does. When you're different, because you're about to make a difference, they repress the shit out of you, which is
Mhm.
why many of my clients are unhealed empaths. So the ones that are the powerful one, empowered in their feelings, that have been disempowered
Mhm.
by, many different reasons. But my upbringing was very difficult for that reason. However, I'm still friends with everyone I was friends with growing up, which is kind of cool. And they'll just say to me, "You've always been this. You've always been telling us. You've always been schooling us about spirituality when you were like 11."
Right.
So I was reading the books at like 11 years old, like
Yeah.
what's going on, what's
Yeah.
spirituality, what's spiritual law, because I knew, but I
Yeah.
knew I wasn't going to fit into society with that knowing, which
Yeah.
also took me on another course of I'll just be what's successful in society, but
Mhm.
it wasn't what felt good to me.
Yeah.
So it was
Mhm.
a tough road.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question. We actually talked about this yesterday as well. How did you go about discerning when you're feeling something, whether it's yours or someone else's? Because I think because you mentioned
Candace is
we're
like,
all-
yeah.
I'm like, let's write a book about just that.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Okay, I have a part two, but I'll let you respond to
Yeah.
this one, because it's like, is this mine? Is this yours? Like, what am I feeling?
Right.
Like, especially after
It's
being
a
for
freaking
a long
nightmare.
time.
That
Yeah.
is a nightmare.
It is.
And I will say, I think my autonomy and my freedom dropped in when I realized none of the things I was feeling was mine, none of the negativity that was put on me as a child. And it's funny because it happened to me even recently. Like, I'm really good at it now because I have so many clients that I'm like, when I first started coaching, I would take it all on so they could feel better, and then I'd get sick. And I was like, what am I doing? You know, because I have this ability to just make it better for you. And that was very validating. Then I was like, no, that's terrible. And what I learned over time is to have this sort of neutral observer aspect where I know myself so well and I know my natural feelings, and like that realm, we all have like an arc of feelings that if something feels off, it's not mine. And I did this the other day where I had a really heavy week of trauma clients. And I was like, God, I'm feeling like so fucked up. And can I swear on here? Sorry.
Yeah, oh, yeah, please.
Shit. And I
Don't be
realized,
yourself.
yeah, thank you. I love that so much. And I remember thinking, oh, this client was going, oh my God, it's hers. And the second I did that, I was back. But as a child, it was a goddamn nightmare because I'm like, why do I have all these weird feelings? And I was a very happy kid, and I didn't understand why I would have such heavy emotions. And here's the funny thing is, as soon as I moved out of my childhood home, I was totally different and never went back to that. And I remember my mother saying to me, you're just thriving on your own. Why do you think that is? I'm like, why do you think that is? I'm like,
I
right?
swear I was gonna say that's the dysregulation of your mom for sure. 100%.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
100%. And, you know, that's why I always say, I know the space I need to be in. I need a lot of space energetically. I always say it's because I have a big aura. I don't know if that's true or not, but I need like space to really be able to discern. In small spaces, I do have a hard time because I'm feeling people's energy so much that I'm like, I need to go take a break. Like, can't do it. And so the bigger my house, the better I feel. But it's
I love
easy. It's
that.
true. I'm like, yeah,
I-
why not?
yeah.
But and it keeps getting bigger and bigger. I'm like, this is really interesting, Candace. We got to reel this in. But what I notice is I'm so keenly aware of my dark, my light, my up, my down, everything about my damn self because I've done so much work that is never an issue for me for longer than 5 minutes these days. But as a kid, it was probably the bane of my existence, taking on any partner's shit, almost taking on an identity to match that shit to get along with it. So
Yeah.
being an unhealed empath sucks. Being an empowered empath is incredible. It's that shift of owning your emotions, validating your emotions, knowing who you truly are will help you know who others truly are and not take that on.
Yeah. I love that.
And it feels like doing the inner child work is the way to
It's
get
the only
there.
way. It's the only way.
Yes, Candace, thank you. It is the only way.
You just validated it.
Well, no, it's
true.
It's true. I've been talking about this for years, and I've been saying it. I've been doing it. I work with all my clients. It's like, no, you're not getting it. It's the inner child. It leads in every way possible.
It is. It is, because think about it, you guys. I mean, you totally know this. We are born perfect for our purpose. What happens is all the shit gets dumped on us, all these ideas of who we are rather than what we really are because of how we truly feel. So we take on all these masks and these blocks and these wounds. And my work is to undo all of that, to go back to the purity that you are so you can actually step into your purpose. And actually, I hope people understand this too, because people hate it. They're like, well, if I wasn't wounded, this wouldn't happen. I'm like, but you are. So you have to be where you are to be real about how you feel, to heal this out of your system. Life will meet you. Life always catches up to you. And people are like, 65-year-old client, she's like, I've missed my purpose. I'm like, be with me for a couple of years and you won't. Now she's like, oh my God, I'm writing a book. Your life cannot miss your purpose as long as you don't miss your truth.
Right.
So, you know, it's a whole thing. When I first started doing inner child work, like deep dive, it was probably 2011. And my life completely transformed because I was like, shit, the missing piece is within me. Like this girl is brilliant. She led me to every choice I needed, whether things worked out or not. It was exactly what I needed at that time. People always say to me, do you regret being married because it ended in divorce? I'm like, fuck no. It was one of the best decisions I ever made. I got to totally heal, built my business, felt love and family. Like it was the best thing. And now it's done. So
Yeah.
we have to understand the inner child is going to always guide us to what's right. When we're kids and we have parents who are unaware and unconscious, the inner child is said to be wrong because it's not getting the love that you need, because you're
Right.
supposed to
Mhm.
do what's right according to your parent. I say do what's right according to God. And
Mhm.
that voice, that guidance is in you. And if we start to really listen to that over the tribe we're supposed to fit into or the career we're supposed to do, we're going to
Mhm.
live our truth. If we
Yeah.
ignore it, we'll never be fulfilled or happy or probably healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have another question.
Okay, I love it.
Things
I
are
love
just
it.
coming up. I'm like, oh, I want to ask this question. Everything you said, 100%. Now, if someone is saying, okay, I want to listen to my inner child, I want to start doing this work, I want to start listening. How do you help your clients discern between the mental and the fear
Mhm.
and the voice of the inner child?
That's a
Because
huge thing I do. And it's very easy, by the way. People think it's the hardest thing in the world. I have this, again, this instinct where I can tell when you're not telling the truth, even if
Yeah.
it's the truth for you. It's like a higher truth that you just, it's like a channel. I'm like, boom, yes, boom, no. I can't explain it, but it's right, right? I mean, I've done it enough where I'm like, ooh, I really get this. And if someone tells me, oh, I'm like, that was in your head, it's in your body. What are you feeling? Right. And sometimes it will be a message that doesn't sound like the inner child. I'm like, well, that's what's blocking the inner child. Right. So the inner child voice, or what I like to call the inner counselor, is pure, loving, unconditional, sweet. Like sometimes the inner teen is pissed. I'm like, oh, it's your inner teen. Like
Yeah.
I just know how to discern it. And so when people are like, oh, I'm in fear because of blah, 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 I'm like, well, the inner child doesn't actually have fear about being worthy. The inner child knows it's worthy. So anything outside of that is a programmed response or a condition that you've had to attach to feel safe. And so I'll trigger that fear, and I want you to sit in that being your reality. And
Right.
sometimes people are so uncomfortable, they have to get up. Candace, I can't go there. And I'm like, okay, so I'll give you this example. This one client, she had a very similar upbringing to me, and she was actually kind of addicted to possessions. She
Mhm.
had to be the most rich, the most, all these things. Okay. And
Mhm.
I said, now I want you to, because this happened to me in life, I said, I want you to sit in the reality that all of that is going away. She
Yeah.
couldn't do it. And I said, I want you to sit in the discomfort of all of it going away and the resistance to it. And you know what she said? The most brilliant thing she's ever said. She goes, if it all goes away, she was bullied in high school and she had a terrible child. She goes, if it all goes away, then they're going to know they're right about me.
Right.
Mm,
Right.
So your band-aid is to make it look like I'm worthy so
Yeah.
that they don't know they're right, because you don't know that they're not right yet. And
Mhm.
when you know that they're not right and you know your worth comes within, you don't give a shit about your possessions. You're like, this is a lot of responsibility, right? You
Yeah.
don't care. You might like them, but you don't care. And she's like, I'm not there. She's like, it takes over me. I hate that about myself. I'm like, no, no, no. Love that about yourself, because that was the way you got along until you were aware enough to not need it. And so when our coping mechanism becomes our prison, that's
Mhm.
when we know we're ready for the upgrade into the authenticity. But I have so many people at that point now, and they're afraid that if I am authentic, it just won't be enough. So I'm afraid to fail. And I'm
Yeah.
like, if you don't go try it out and find out that it is enough, you've already failed your authentic self.
Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
fear versus intuition is really clear to me. If you fear anything, it isn't your intuition.
Right.
Fear of like a bear feels a lot different than that deep
Yeah.
emotional.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is that bodily.
It's like,
Yeah,
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 totally.
It's
yeah.
an
Totally.
attachment. People are very attached to their safe zone that
Yes.
has nothing to do with their truth, like
Yeah.
nothing.
I
Mhm.
agree with that. That's yeah, I mean, you said it best in that moment. It's like fear leads in so many ways, and we're so caught in the image of everything all the time, and how we don't want people to have a different opinion of us or character. And then, you want to move
Can I
into the,
say something about that? Because it's
yeah,
so annoying to me how
yes,
society has created this.
yes.
And, you know, for the last, I don't know, decade or so, I've been in my, let's say, empowerment of self
Mhm.
without any externals. I don't know if you guys have heard about my story at all, but when I think, I don't know how many years ago, I was living in this huge house in Malibu, driving a freaking Maserati, had this perfect life, and it burnt down. The house was in a fire.
Oh
The
my God.
Maserati was taken. Like
Wow.
everything shifted. My dog died. All these things happened at once. And it was funny because I was the most secure I'd ever been during that time. I didn't realize all the work was working because I'd been
Right.
doing work for so long. And I
Mhm.
realized in that moment, oh my God, these were just things I needed as an insecure woman to prove to others. But once I had proven it to myself, and I was coaching through the fire and all this stuff, and people were like, how are you being you when you're losing everything? I'm like, I'm not losing anything that matters. And that's
Yeah.
when it really hit me that I was like, oh, I'm free. I don't really need anything. I can live in a fucking cabin if I feel like it. And it was weird because it was amazing because I felt that freedom of like, I'm truly enough. Like,
Mhm.
wow, it was just proven to me that I don't value those things. I thought I should for others' opinions. And
Right.
when I realized that I don't give a shit about others' opinions because my opinion of myself is so accurate with what I know to be about myself. And the service work I do in the world gives me all of my joy. I
Mhm.
realized that, to be honest, that's the system. Society's like, you need all these things because these things, like really focusing on these things, takes you away from these things internally that you really need to feel the fulfillment and the joy. And so I actually felt it by having a physical shift, like everything was taken. And I was like, I think it's okay. Like, I will never abandon myself if things are taken, which
Yeah.
translates into I'll never abandon myself if others abandon me. I'll never reject myself if others. And that
Yeah.
is the ticket to your
Yeah.
ultimate authentic life is you
Yeah.
can't give a rat's ass about others. Plus, coaching for over a decade, I'm like, everyone has issues. Everyone's the same. They just play it out differently. So if I'm around a bunch of people who are super conscious, amazing. If I'm not, they're not conscious. What's the difference? Why are we judging our worth on people's opinions that haven't even done their work? Truly.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. Agreed with that. I agree with that. I can't just, she
Yeah.
kills me.
I'm like, you know,
I love it. This is what I said. I said, I like being around people who get it, and
yeah.
understand where I feel I've had, I've been through so many deaths and rebirths and deaths and
Oh,
rebirths.
I get
That's what
it.
that fluidity of
Loss,
that
of
loss,
grief.
tons of grief,
Yeah.
tons of loss. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah, I've been through some big like losses and grief and experiences, and it
yep,
always pulls you closer to your authentic self,
it
pulls you,
does.
elevates
Because
your
you
life.
can't lose
Yeah,
anything when you're in your
no, really,
truth.
you
That's why it's
can't.
like, oh, I lost my dog. It was the worst thing that ever happened to me in my life was my dog dying because she was my
Yeah.
baby. She was my child.
Mhm.
And when she died in my arms, I felt this crazy freedom of like, she looked at me, I looked at her, she passed away. And I was like, oh, losing the biggest love of your life isn't actually that scary either. The idea of it, because she's still with me, she's with me all the time. It's just,
Yeah.
she elevated me to understanding that loss is actually a 3D experience. It
Mhm.
truly is because in 5D, you don't lose people that you love. They're
Yeah.
there. It's just a
Yeah.
different dimension. That might sound weird, but I don't care because that's how I felt.
Yeah.
And I do feel. And so it kind of makes your biggest fears when you go through so much shit and loss, it makes your biggest fears nothing to fear. It's kind of interesting to me. I'm like, that's going to happen. How do I navigate that? Or maybe that won't happen. You're open to everything. And when you close off, you're closed off to yourself. So you
Mhm.
have to stay open to being hurt. You have to stay
Yeah.
open to losing everything. You have to stay open to like it not going your way. You have to be open for the love of your life to be like, I'm cheating on you. You have to be open and be like, and I'm fine.
Right.
That
Right.
sounds nutty, but it's actually the
No.
reality.
There's bravery in that. And that's what
Yeah,
people need to adapt to. There has to be this adaptation around bravery and being
I
able
love
to
that.
courageous going into the journey of your truth, no matter what life is throwing at you. And
Hmm.
that's I think that's the hard part. Sometimes people don't understand how to step into that. And that really is just like trusting that you're going to be caught by the universe and you're going to be okay. And you're going to be brave
That's a
enough to
huge
like
issue for
just
people.
right. It's
Mhm.
like it's the bravery part, right? Because like we can talk about, the inner child work and the joy and all the great things and all the shifts and everything that comes with that. But if someone's not brave enough to face it and navigate all of that comes with it, it can be hard. I get that, but I'm always trying to encourage, this with my
Mhm.
clients and everybody. I'm like, just step into it. Just a little, just a little.
Well, I fully agree. And I will add this because, I have people that'll say to me, so what am I supposed to do? Just trust myself? I'm like, no, because you don't trust your fucking self.
Yeah.
What you have to do is be honest about the fact that you don't. And so when we talk about bravery, it's kind of a double-edged sword because people have no idea how to trust the universe because they're so busy finding evidence in their life that it's not safe to do that. They're afraid if something bad happens, that means there's something bad about me. If something went wrong, I did it wrong. And I'm like, oh my God, we personalize things so much that keeps us away from the power of transformation. I'm like, hey, maybe, so I got a divorce. I'm like, yeah, I'm sure I had a part in that. And there's a part I didn't have. And great, I'll learn the lesson and move on. Like, why we constantly punish ourselves
Yes.
and keep ourselves down to be safe because I'm bad, because we don't want to find out that we're unworthy. We don't want to find out that the God hates us. We don't want to find out that we're abandoned by the universe, because so many people come to me and say, I'm abandoned by the universe. I'm like, the universe? Or did you make your mom's opinion the universe's opinion?
Exactly. Yep.
So,
Yep.
by the way, when you line up with the universe, it means you're going to unalign with those that are not in alignment with that. And we have a big problem in our society saying, I have a bad mom. I have a not enough good enough dad. And I'm like, but that's the truth. That is the truth. Your mother was not God. She was your false God. When you look at the fact that she has all these fucking wounds that she put onto you, you'll see that the universe has this crazy, undying, unconditional love for you that's waiting for you when you believe that you deserve that outside of what mom taught you deserve about you.
Yep. Yeah.
That's a huge hurdle. It takes people
Yep.
a really long time to get through that one.
But so I don't know, comparables here for a second. You had a massive mother wound. I had a massive mother wound. And so therefore there's this opportunity. I'm not saying if you did or if you didn't, I'm saying there could be a possibility of like this
Right.
massive mother wound,
Right.
right? However, for me, it was like this wound where there was like so many limitations put on, value and stepping into your light and your purpose and having people take. My mom was, someone who had so many of those limitations put on her, but she was also a taker on top of that. So it was very hard
Of course
to
she
be
was.
right? Yeah. So then it's like you're navigating your experiences, but then everything feels like a threat too, because you're like, oh, you're stepping into this light and it feels really good, but who's going to take it from me? And when is it going to be taken from
That's
me?
everybody's fear of shining.
Right?
If I shine,
Yeah.
it'll be taken. That was my
Yeah.
little child. Like every little journal I ever read about myself, because I started journaling when I was 7 years old.
Yes.
I would say, I'm afraid to be me, they'll take it.
Yes.
But what that transferred into to me is if I shine too bright, my mom gets jealous of me and hates me. So I'll stay down here. But then if I'm
just
down,
had that conversation yesterday, Candace.
but it's an upper limits issue, because if I go down here, then she has proof that I suck. So I have to just be safe in the middle way. Right. So for me, it was breaking out of that upper limits issue, stop sabotaging myself as soon as I'd get to exactly what I wanted, because that was my freaking pattern all through my life. Is I'm almost on the cover of this magazine, but I better eat a pan of brownies to not do it. It was like this inner thing that would make me not get it, because if I get it, then I'm a target.
Yes.
So, right? So we're afraid of
Yes.
our shine because of toxic humans, not because of the universe. So we have to really understand who we're dealing with. But also, I got to the point where I was like, wait a minute. If my potential is to be what the universe, God created me to be, then I'm going to fucking be that no matter who doesn't like it and who I'm going to leave behind, because that's what brings me joy. And so I literally, people call it selfish. No. It's called self-honoring. The self-honoring thing is to do that. Now, what I've noticed by doing that is it actually heals the generational wounds behind me that weren't allowed to do that, that didn't want me to do that. Because in me giving myself a permission slip, it's like the parent gets to feel like, oh, I didn't fuck her up. I'm not that bad. Right. It's this weird thing where we heal and they start to heal. My mom's one of my biggest fans now. I'm like, what? You hated me my whole life. But
Right.
whatever that is, right? Another episode. So it's funny because yes, I had a mother wound and a father wound and basically a family wound. And that's all healed in the last 5 years, which is crazy. But also it's like you can't win in any direction with people who have wounding. So what I always say is win anyway and be afraid to lose the ones that want you to lose yourself. I have a client right now who's older. And she's been in a marriage for 35 years and she's like shining really bright right now, like I told her she would. And she's like, oh, I didn't think it ever happened. And she goes, I'm afraid to be out loud like this, though, because I might lose my marriage. And then what? I said, great, be willing to lose your marriage. Because if you're not being your true, authentic self, you're losing yourself. So you either lose yourself now that you're aware, or you lose your marriage, or you have the bravery of seeing that if he really does love me and if this is a healing vortex, he might shift into alignment with what's true.
Yes,
Mhm.
that I
So
agree.
we have to really trust that process of everything is always happening for me, which means I'll survive it. It's not going to be fun, but it will be okay if I stay with me. And that's the key through all of this is uniting with your inner child. Integration of the inner child equals integrity. You're living in your truth. There is nothing more powerful or better or exciting than that. So if
Yeah.
I have to lose a bunch of shit that I think keeps me safe, I have work to do on what safety is.
Yes.
Right. And maybe as like a final piece of advice, I mean, I know this has worked for me because I had so much fear around stepping into my power, and I'm
Yeah.
still struggling with a lot of that. It's like, what is the smallest step that I can take today? It's almost like step by step,
I love
baby
it.
steps. But it's not like, oh, I've got to go and do all of this, and tomorrow I need to be like on stage or whatever in front of thousands. Like,
No,
no.
that's again, that's a trauma
It's like, what
response.
is the smallest thing? Do I need to have a conversation with this person? Like we talked about, like, what is this?
No.
What is the smallest step I can take in that direction? And then as I see how people respond or not respond, maybe they respond well, maybe they don't. But if I'm okay with that, then that builds inner strength to keep going and take bigger steps.
So your key is inner, outer, and external boundaries, energetic boundaries. So for you, the best thing to do is listening to what I want or listening to a boundary, listening to something that doesn't feel good and speak the fuck up. Hey, that didn't feel good. And you're going to be like stressed out because they're not going to like it. And you'll be like, yeah, it's true though, but it's true. It's true. Hey, I'm really sorry you don't like that. Can you tell me why that is? You're just open to whatever the truth is. The truth is this doesn't feel good. And if I don't line up with that and speak it out loud, I've just disempowered myself. It's that big in that little situation.
Myself. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Because, you know, people always laugh at me in my groups. They're like, you're so outspoken. You're such a straight shooter. You just tell it how it is. It's because I know how it is for me. And if I don't say it, I suffer. So I'm not willing to suffer for your insecurity. I'm going to tell you what the fuck's up. I always tell my clients in the group, they always laugh. I'm like, you're not going to like this. And they're like, you always say that. And they're like, oh, I do like it because it's true. It's true. And so I don't care if people don't like the truth. It's going to serve you. It's going to serve the other person too, because like I said, with my family, it's done this massive 180. It's still in the process. It's because I'm just not stopping. I'm not saying the truth. I'm like, oh, this video bothers you because it's about you. Great. Watch it. Maybe you'll learn something. Right. So, and my sister was laughing the other day. She's like, oh my God, all your videos. What the fuck? I'm like, yeah. Did you learn? She's like, it's so true. I'm like, it is so true. She's like, my cousin asked me, how do you feel comfortable saying all that shit out loud about our family? I'm like, why aren't you?
Yeah.
It's true, isn't it? They're like, it is true. I'm like, so I'm helping you, me, and everyone see that these truthful dynamics need to be unveiled to have deeper healing. And I'm not worried about who it bothers because it bothers people who are unhealed. Healed people want the truth.
Ultimately, you're doing them a favor.
You're doing them a favor by being honest. And if they want to reject it, hey, I'm sorry you want to live in the shadow, but I don't. I'm living out loud and I'm shining really bright. And if it really bothers people or if it's uncomfortable, bye.
Yeah, I agree with that. No, those are my mottos too. I'll tell you that.
I know it sounds harsh, but when you really are in that zone, it's not.
It's relatable. I'm very much like that. And I've struggled with it because people don't know how to handle that. Right. And it's like, well, I'm not going to dim my light or feel like I have to hold myself back for your approval or your validation or your opinion of what I should have said differently or whatever.
Yeah. And one of the things I think we should mention, because this comes up a lot in my groups, is people are afraid that their authentic self won't fit into society. I'm like, exactly.
Yeah.
Why do you still, and like, I have a bunch of clients too, who will like do a bunch of healing work with me. And then they're like, okay, now I'll fit in. I'm like, we just did all this work for you to break free from that. What are you talking about? So everybody's like still trying to like, okay, this will be fixed so that we'll be healed. I've seen myself do it. And I'm like, what am I doing? And then I'm like, no, this is fixed. So I don't give a shit if it's healed. I mean, that's true healing because we need to feel whole without everyone else needing to be okay.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. That's so true. That is so.
And by the way, if you don't fit into society, I always say to my clients, does my career fit into society? They're like, no, but you made it work. I'm like, and what's different about you? You could too, but you don't believe enough because you're still looking for everybody else to say, oh, good job. It's okay. When I was like, yeah, I'm going to be a spiritual teacher, I didn't give a shit if people believe me or not. I just started talking and everyone liked it. And I'm like, see, I'm just telling the truth. And it resonates. And maybe some people don't like it. I don't care.
Because it's the day that I turned to my parents and said, I've been hiding, I'm a psychic medium and I'm
Yeah.
do this work or whatever. And they're like, excuse me? And I'm like, yeah, this is what's happening now. And they're like, what is happening? And then the next day, people were like showing up my front door. And my dad's like, what are you telling these people? He's like, there's been in and out all day long. I'm like, yeah, well, I just opened the door. Yeah. And like,
when you're being in your gift, you are serving the ones you're supposed to serve. Nobody's purpose is going to be a drought. You're born perfect for your purpose. If you're doing your purpose, you have a place in the world. It doesn't mean you have a place in society.
Right.
I don't want to have a place in society. My place in society is telling society what the fuck's wrong with society.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So honestly, like we're being funny here, but it's actually kind of true. It's like,
yes.
If I was a model and an actress because I'm like, I need to fit in somehow. Then I was like, this is a terrible industry. Sorry, this is not good for people. And now I'm like, oh, I'll just do what feels right for me and see what happens. And what happened is I'm booked solid for months on end for 11 years.
Yeah.
And then people are like, what's your marketing? I'm like, God, I've never hired any marketing ever in my fucking life because I'm just being me. And this is what I feel people have to understand. If you're being you, there is a place for you. It doesn't mean you're going to be a multimillionaire, or maybe it does mean that, but it's whatever you are doing is going to be happy for you because that's what you're here to do. And when you're lined up with your truth and your purpose in the world, there is nothing more fulfilling. I don't give a shit if you have one client a year. I have clients who have clients, but they don't have a lot of clients and they don't care because they're like, oh, that one day changed my life. I'm like, well, that's what you're here to do. A lot of people are like, well, Candace, I'm not as like out there. I don't have a following like you. I'm like, and you're not supposed to be me. Because maybe other things are going to happen in your life.
I was just going to say that.
It's perfect for you.
The competition and the comparison, right? It's
the
like
worst.
It's like everyone's doing it differently. We could all be like hairdressers, but the way you do your hair and the way you do your hair,
that's right.
Experiences that you need to have. It's not.
That's the other thing.
From anybody else, right?
That's a really good thing.
I do inner child work. There's no taking away. It's like Candace has a perspective. I have it from this perspective. We're both winning. This is amazing, right? Like the more people we can help, the better. Why does it have to be a competition with somebody, right? It's this lack mentality. That's it. And it really is.
When I hear someone say to me, well, you're already doing that. I'm like, ooh, you're in your ego. You're not in your authentic self, because there's like when I first started, I was the only fucking person doing this. I felt like, there was no one doing this 11, 12 years ago. And now like everyone's doing it. And I'm like, but my clients come to me like, no one does it like you. I'm like, cause I'm your teacher. You might be somebody else's teacher, but it's the story I've had and the life I've lived that I can understand such intricate shit that most people can't understand about their specific thing. Cause I've lived it. So those that find me are literally me many years ago. So you're going to find you many years ago. And I'm always like, I have no worry that people will take anything from me. I'm like, there's enough people in the fucking world. We'll all be abundant. Stay in your lane and calm down.
Exactly. So do you find that your ADHD elevates your intuition and like helps you see those patterns differently? Because there is, I find, because I'm dyslexic, right? So I find that dyslexia, the way my brain operates, opens me up to so much when it comes to mediumship and like the soul retrieval aspect of things that I do. And it really pulled me away from like the system at school. Like it just I didn't fit into the system, right? So it was like, it served this beautiful master, like purpose, right? Do you find your ADHD helped?
So I don't really give a shit what ADHD is. I call it attention dialed to a higher dimension, because I'm always like tuned into something outside of the system. And I believe I wrote this book that I never published, which is really not a great idea. I should have published it, but I wrote a book about it about 12 years ago, and I will put it in the book that I'm writing now, a lot of this stuff. But I say, we're the cycle breakers, we're the system busters. And it's funny, I was the only kid in my entire town with ADHD in 1985, but now everyone has it because the kids are coming in more conscious. And what we're here to do is bust through an old school system that is not 5D, it's 3D, and it's suffocating, it's exhausting. So for me, I've never felt like I have ADD. I just know I think different. And those of us who have these neurodiversities going on are actually here to be the change the system actually needs. So for me, when I dropped all those lies about there's something wrong with you, your brain is weird, I'm like, actually, it's kind of elevated in certain ways. And maybe I'm not the most organized person in the world. I don't give a shit. That doesn't have anything to do with my work, right? It's
You
like,
could hire someone to organize
that's
you.
what I say. I go, I have 3 assistants because I don't know how to fucking do any of that. And I don't even know where the email is, right? So I don't care. I just texted you. I'm like, did you guys send me an email? I'm the worst. Okay. And I love that about myself because I'm not interested in organizing. My boyfriend hates it because he's like, I think he's OCD and he thinks I'm messy. I'm like, sorry, dude. I go, I don't clean kitchens. I hire people to do that for me because I'm so bad at it. Like, sorry if you like doing it. I don't. So to answer your question, 100%, I feel like the neurodiversity is, look, some people will go to school and get their doctorate from fucking Cornell. I don't know. And that's what we need in the world. We need doctors. I'm not that. I'm somebody that lives outside of that vortex because we need people like us too. So I feel it's so unfortunate that the school system still, they're doing better, but they still don't honor neurodiversity. They say, you're wrong, take a pill, you're not like the rest. And I'm sitting here like, well, if you want us to be all like you, we're going to have a shitty life and a shitty world, and we're not going to have what we need to get us elevated to another dynamic because I'm not going to learn what I need to teach in this world in this school. This is not happening. And so as soon as I went to college, it was like a whole other ball game. I took myself off Ritalin at 17 years old and I got straight A's in college because I was studying what the hell I wanted to study. And it had a lot to do with what I'm doing. So if you make me study freaking engineering, I'm going to get an F because I don't give a fuck. Like, I really don't care. And I noticed a lot of people with dyslexia or ADHD, they're born with a specific focus for a specific purpose. And most of the time it is not in this institution. It's not. So yeah, we're going to look crazy because we're so frustrated that no one's letting us do what we're so into.
I agree. I know. I love that. This conversation has been so good and so validating and so just, it's like, it's nice to meet like a fellow, I don't know, like I don't know anybody else that's doing inner child besides Teal Swan. I do follow Teal
Amazing.
Swan, right? Besides Teal Swan, you and me. I'm like, I know people are doing it, but
we gotta call it something. What are
we do? I don't know. What are we, right? Like, is there a community of us? Like, where are we, right?
Let's create it because there hasn't been. And that's the other thing is we've been alone. I've been a lone ranger for a long time.
I've been navigating this for so long by myself. And only within the last death and rebirth, I would say, have I finally opened up a little bit more of like, oh, no, I need to find my people, like people
for sure.
who I can relate to and understand and like, just be like, hey, we're on the same page about certain things, you know. It's been interesting lately to connect with some really great people. So this has been great, Candace. I appreciate you so much for coming on our podcast. This has been, I really, really enjoyed this. And I appreciate you for coming on our podcast.
Oh, no, thank you so much. And I'll have you on mine. We need to like have more of these conversations and make it super normal and normal. What is that? I don't know.
But our normalcy. We're going to create our view of
we are.
And we're going to start.
Well, it's just like more. it's picking little souls into your soul tribe. And you're like, oh, now we resonate. Just meeting you, I feel like, oh, there's another sister, 2 more sisters for me. Like, it's so beautiful. Our world is not at all designed to just enjoy abundance of friendships and not compete and not be like, I'm like, this is great. Maybe we'll do an event together. Like, you know, I just love all of that.
I've caught a vision of that. So
great. See you on the panel. Fun. You know what I mean?
I'd love that.
Definitely. Thank you, ladies, so much. This has been really enjoyable.
Bye.
Bye, guys.